The single mother fell ill and sent her daughter to work, but the millionaire thought the young woman was his new lover. Amidst confusion and secrets, the truth comes to light. And what started as a mistake turned into a forbidden passion. If this story interests you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us from which city you are watching us. We continue. The cell phone rang for the third time as Lena highlighted another important passage from the scientific article on congenital heart disease. Her eyes were burning after hours of poring over the text spread out on the small table in the apartment. The rain was beating down on the windows that March afternoon, creating a melancholic melody that matched her mood. In 2 days, she would face the most important interview of her life, the last chance to get the long-awaited scholarship for a residency in pediatric cardiac surgery. Daughter. Selma's weak voice on the other end of the line made her heart tighten. I can't get out of bed. My fever won't go down, and I have a huge list of rooms to clean at the hotel today. Lena closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the choice she would have to make. Selma, her adoptive mother, was all she had in life. She was the one who took her in after she lost her biological parents, who held her hand in the most difficult moments, especially after the premature death of her brother Raphael, a victim of a heart condition that was not diagnosed in time. Mom, you need to rest. You can't work like this, Lena replied, already mentally calculating how much they had saved for emergencies. Practically nothing. The hotel is full because of the international technology event. If I missed today, I could lose my job. You know the contract is temporary. Selma's voice was interrupted by a dry cough. Lena looked at the scientific articles in front of her. She needed to study more, to prepare better for the interview. This was her last attempt at the scholarship, after 3 years of trying. But how could she concentrate knowing that Selma was sick and at risk of losing her job? Give me the address of the hotel, he said finally, already standing up. I'll go in your place. But daughter, your interview, I still have tomorrow to study. You need to recover. 15 minutes later, Lena stood in front of the mirror in the small bathroom, tying her hair into a simple bun and adjusting the uniform she had borrowed from Selma. Her mother's name tag completed her disguise. Her hands were shaking slightly, not from the lie she was about to tell, but from the precious study time she would lose. The Luxor Hotel was an imposing building in the heart of the city's financial district. Lena had never been to such a luxurious place. She showed up at the service entrance, imitating the gestures and posture she had seen her mother adopt so many times. To her surprise, no one questioned her presence. In such busy times, an extra, cleaning lady was welcome. Selma, I'm so glad you're here, the floor supervisor exclaimed, handing her a list. Start with the presidential suite. Mr. Delval just left for a meeting and asked that the room be tidied up until he returns. Lena nodded, pushing the cleaning cart toward the service elevator. As she ascended, her mind wandered through the pages of articles she needed to study. She visualized the surgical procedures, the innovative techniques she could learn if she got the scholarship. All for Raphael, she thought, so that no other child would have to leave so soon due to lack of diagnosis. The presidential suite took up the entire top floor. Lena was momentarily dazzled by the panoramic view of the city, the raindrops creating hypnotic patterns on the huge windows. The place was bigger than her entire apartment. She began to clean methodically, as Selma had taught her, trying to be as efficient as possible. She was changing the towels in the master bathroom when she heard the sound of the suite door opening. Her heart raced. The supervisor had said that the guest would only return later. Before she could announce herself, a male voice full of irony cut through the silence. So this is how Luxor welcomes its VIP guests? I have to admit, it's creative. Lena froze at the words, her face burning with embarrassment as she understood the insinuation. She turned slowly to find Artur Delval standing in the bathroom doorway, his cold, calculating gaze sweeping her up and down. He was younger than she would have guessed for a tech billionaire. He couldn't be more than 35. But his posture exuded an authority that made her instinctively recoil. "Sir, there's been a mistake," she began, her voice shaking slightly. "I'm just..." "The hotel's courtesy," he interrupted, a sarcastic smile playing on his lips. "It's not the first time someone's tried this kind of approach to me, although I must admit, the maid disguise is interesting." The humiliation hit Lena like a slap. In her 24 years of life, she had never felt so diminished, so misunderstood. Her hands gripped the cleaning cloth tightly as she tried to maintain her composure. "You are completely mistaken," she replied, her voice now steady despite the internal tremor. "I just came to clean the room as requested, if you'll excuse me." She tried to walk past him, but Arthur subtly blocked her path. "Do you know how much this suite costs per night? More than you probably earn in a month. People always want something from me, money, status, connections. What's your interest?" That was the last straw. Lena lifted her chin, her eyes flashing with indignation. "Not everyone has a price, Mr. Delval. Some people still preserve their dignity, no matter how humble their position." Without waiting for a response, she quickly walked around him, dropping the cleaning cloth on the cart and heading for the door. Her hands were shaking so badly that she could barely turn the doorknob. She didn't notice that in her haste, Selma's name tag had come loose from her uniform, falling silently onto the plush carpet. In the service elevator, the tears finally came. She wasn't crying because of the humiliation, but because of the injustice of being judged by her appearance, because she was trying to help her mother. She thought about Raphael, how he always told her she was the strongest person he knew. "You're going to be the best doctor in the world, Leigh," he used to say, his eyes shining with childlike admiration. He left through the back door of the hotel without saying goodbye or giving any explanations. The rain was still falling, now heavier, soaking his borrowed uniform as he walked to the bus stop. His cell phone vibrated. It was a message from the residency program coordinator, confirming the interview time for 2 days later. In his luxurious apartment, Arthur Delval stared at the badge he had found on the floor, an uncomfortable feeling growing in his chest. Something about the young woman's reaction disturbed him. It wasn't the kind of response he was used to receiving. There was a genuine dignity in her indignation that intrigued him. "I need the security camera footage from my floor," he said on the phone to the hotel manager, "for the last 2 hours. Half. An hour later, he watched the recordings on his laptop. The young woman appeared at various points, methodically cleaning other rooms on the floor, always focused, always professional. Nothing in her actions suggested any ulterior motives. The revelation hit him like a punch in the gut. He had made an error in judgment. The address on the badge led him to a simple neighborhood in the northern zone. In the small apartment, he found a woman with a high fever, who confirmed the story. Lena was his adopted daughter, a medical student, who had replaced her at work so that she wouldn't lose her temporary job. "She just wanted to help me," Selma explained between coughing fits. "My daughter has a huge heart, sir. Ever since she lost her little brother, she's dedicated her life to trying to save other children." Arthur left the apartment with a strange feeling in his chest. For the first time in years, he felt truly ashamed of his prejudices, of his arrogance. The image of Lena's indignant eyes would not leave his mind. There was something different about her, something that made him question all his certainties about people and their intentions. The next morning, Lena tried to focus on the scientific papers spread out on the kitchen table. Her coffee sat cold, beside her untouched, as her nervous hands highlighted important passages about innovative surgical procedures. The next day was her residency interview, and she felt like every minute she wasted could cost her her dream. The doorbell rang, interrupting his thoughts. When he opened the door, his heart almost stopped. Arthur Delval was standing in the hallway of the modest building, out of place in his impeccable suit, holding an envelope in one hand and a pharmacy bag in the other. "May I come in?" he asked, his voice devoid of the arrogance of the day before. "I brought some medicine for your mother. The hotel manager told me she has a serious viral infection." Lena hesitated, but eventually stepped aside. She watched as he surveyed the small apartment, his eyes lingering on the medical books, the family photos on the wall, the dusty guitar in the corner of the room. "I came to apologize," Arthur began. placing the envelope and the medicine on the table. "My behavior yesterday was unforgivable. I made a hasty and unfair judgment about you." "Why are you really here, Mr. Delval?" Lena asked, crossing her arms. "It's certainly not common for a billionaire to personally show up to apologize to a chambermaid." A sad smile crossed his lips. "Maybe because never before has a maid made me question my own prejudices so much." He paused, looking at Raphael's picture on the wall. "Your mother told me about your brother, about his dream of becoming a pediatric cardiac surgeon." Lena felt her throat tighten. She didn't like talking about Raphael with strangers, but there was something in Arthur's expression that seemed genuinely interested, almost vulnerable. "I saw the articles on your desk," he continued. "Are you preparing for something important?" "I have an interview tomorrow," she replied hesitantly. "It's my last chance to get a residency in the pediatric cardiac surgery program at Central Hospital." "And you replaced your mother at the hotel even though you knew it might compromise your preparation?" The admiration in his voice was evident. "Some choices aren't about what we want, but about what we should do," she replied simply. "Selma sacrificed everything to raise me after my parents left. How could I let her lose her job?" Arthur walked to the window, watching the city awaken outside. His reflection in the glass revealed a thoughtful, almost tormented expression. "You know, Lena, people like you are rare in this world, people who maintain their integrity even when everything conspires against them." He turned, meeting her gaze. "I'd like to redeem myself, to show that I can be better than I appear. Would you like to have coffee with me? I promise it will be just a conversation, without ulterior motives or hasty judgments." Lena studied his face for a moment, looking for signs of deceit or manipulation. To her surprise, she found only sincerity and something else, a kind of loneliness masked by all that powerful man posturing. "Why should I trust you?" she asked, still cautious. "Because, unlike yesterday, today I'm asking permission to meet you for real," he replied, a genuine smile softening his features. "And because I brought the best antibiotics for your mother, recommended by the hotel's private doctor." Lena couldn't help but smile a little. "All right, Mr. Delval, a coffee. But first I need to give Selma her medicine and finish reviewing these articles." "Call me Arthur," he said, picking up one of the articles from the table. "And maybe I can help you with the proofreading. I may not be a doctor, but I know a trick or two about preparing for important interviews." The café Arthur had chosen was on the top floor of a historic building in the city center. The panoramic view made Lena's heart race, not because of the height, but because of the feeling of being in something completely outside her everyday reality. The tables were occupied by executives in expensive suits and women with sparkling jewelry, a world she had only seen on television. "You look uncomfortable," Arthur observed, pulling out the chair for her to sit in. "Let's just say this isn't exactly my natural environment," she replied honestly, adjusting the simple dress she had chosen for the occasion. "And what would its natural environment be? The cafeteria at the hospital where I do my internship, or the community health clinic where I volunteer on the weekends?" She paused, watching him curiously. "What about yours? Has it always been this world of luxury and privilege?" Flicker of something indefinable passed through Arthur's eyes. "Not always," he said, his voice softer. "There was a time when my family depended on the hospital for their survival. When I was 13, I contracted hepatitis and—" He was interrupted by the waiter who arrived with the coffees. Lena noticed how his posture changed instantly, returning to the cold and controlled businessman she had met at the hotel. It was as if wearing that mask was an automatic reflex. "You were going to tell me about the hepatitis," she reminded him when they were alone again. Arthur turned the cup between his fingers, thoughtful. "There was a doctor at the health center who visited me weekly. He would come to my house even after hours to make sure I was following the treatment correctly. Without him—" He paused, as if choosing his words. "Let's just say I wouldn't be here today." "Is that why you reacted like that at the hotel?" Lena asked softly. "Because you learned to distrust people?" "Wealth comes at a price, Lena. You never know if people are drawn to you because of who you are or what you have." He stared at her intently. "Until you meet someone who would rather preserve their dignity than accept favors." The silence that followed was loaded with unspoken meaning. Lena thought about how ironic life was. Here she was, having coffee, with the man who had humiliated her the day before, discovering layers of complexity beneath his seemingly cold surface. "I have a proposal for you," Arthur said suddenly. "I am a major investor in the International Pediatric Cardiovascular Institute. I can secure a full scholarship for your residency there." Lena felt her blood run cold. The institute was a world reference in pediatric cardiac surgeries, a dream far beyond her possibilities. "No," she replied firmly, surprising him. "I appreciate the offer, but I do not accept favors or charity." "It's not charity," he argued. "It's an investment in someone who really deserves a chance." "And how would that be different from people who approach you out of interest?" she challenged him, her eyes fixed on his. "I need to earn my space on my own merit, not through privileged connections." A genuine smile lit up Arthur's face. "Do you know why I chose this cafe?" he asked, seemingly changing the subject. "Because from here you can see the Central Hospital, where you'll have your interview tomorrow. I wanted you to look at it and remember that some battles we have to win alone to prove our worth, especially to ourselves." Lena felt something shift inside her. This man was an enigma, capable of being both terribly arrogant and surprisingly sensitive in the space of 2 days. "Thank you," she said simply. "For what?" "For understanding, for respecting my decision, and—" she hesitated, a small smile playing on her lips, "for showing me that first impressions aren't always definitive." The day of the interview dawned with a timid sun, as if the weather reflected Lena's anxiety. Sitting in the waiting room of the Central Hospital, she mentally reviewed all the surgical techniques she had studied, her hands nervously clutching the folder with her documents. The aseptic corridor brought back memories of Raphael, of how he smiled even on the most difficult days of his hospitalization. "Dr. Lena Santos," a firm voice called, interrupting her thoughts. The examining board consisted of 3 renowned physicians, their serious faces betraying no emotion. Dr. Helena Meny, head of the residency program, led the interview with a demeanor that mixed authority and skepticism. "I see this is your 4th attempt at our residency," she began, flipping through Lena's resume. "What makes you think this time will be any different?" Lena took a deep breath, remembering Arthur's words about proving her own worth. "Because every attempt taught me something new, not just about medicine, but about persistence and purpose." "Your academic record is impressive," said Dr. Ricardo Mueller, another member of the panel, "but I'm intrigued by your volunteer work at the Villa Esperanza Health Center. Why dedicate so much time to a place with so few resources, when you could be specializing in private clinics?" The question hit a nerve. "Because it was at a similar health center that my brother Raphael was unable to get a diagnosis in time," she replied, her voice firm despite her restrained emotion. "Every child I see there reminds me that medicine cannot be a privilege for the few." A heavy silence fell over the room. Dr. Helena leaned forward, her piercing eyes fixed on Lena. "And how do you intend to reconcile a full-time residency in pediatric cardiac surgery with your volunteer work?" "With organization and determination," Lena replied without hesitation. "The same commitment that made me work as a waitress during college to help my adoptive mother, without ever compromising my academic performance." "Interesting that you mention your adoptive mother," commented the 3rd examiner, Dr. Paulo Gauthier, who had remained silent until then. "She works at the Luxor Hotel, doesn't she?" Lena's heart raced. How did he know this detail? "Yes, sir," he replied, maintaining his composure. "She's a cleaner there." "And you never considered that your recent connections with certain hotel guests could open easier doors for your career?" The insinuation was crystal clear. Somehow they knew about Arthur. Lena felt her face heat, but not from embarrassment, from indignation. "Dr. Gauthier," she began, her voice shaking slightly, "if you are suggesting that I would seek unethical shortcuts to achieve my goals, Then perhaps I should remember that we are here to discuss my professional competence, not to make judgments about my moral integrity. Dr. Helena raised her eyebrows, surprised by the direct answer. A small smile appeared on the corner of her lips, quickly suppressed. "Tell us about your research project on congenital heart disease," she asked, abruptly changing the subject. For the next 40 minutes, Lena presented her ideas with passion and technical precision. She spoke about new surgical approaches, the importance of early diagnosis, and how she intended to implement a cardiac screening program in underserved communities. When she finally left the interview room, her legs were shaking. In the hallway, she leaned against the wall and closed her eyes, letting the tears she had been holding back finally flow. She wasn't crying out of sadness or fear, but out of relief that she had stood up for her principles regardless of the outcome. His cell phone vibrated in his pocket. It was a message from Arthur. "No matter the outcome, you have already proven your worth by not giving up who you are." Lena smiled through her tears, realizing that somehow this man who had judged her so poorly in the beginning had become an unexpected source of strength and understanding. The days that followed the interview were a torture of waiting and anxiety. Lena returned to her routine at the health center, but her thoughts constantly returned to that room and the prejudice-laden questions. Selma, already recovered from the infection, noticed her daughter's restlessness. "You did your best, dear," she said one evening as they prepared dinner together, "and your best was always extraordinary. But what if it's not enough this time?" "Either, Mom." Lena chopped the vegetables with more force than necessary. "What if they let prejudice speak louder than my ability? Then they will lose an excellent doctor," a male voice replied from the kitchen doorway. Arthur stood there holding a bouquet of flowers for Selma and a folder for Lena. In the last few weeks, his visits had become more frequent, always with some professional excuse or gift for the lady who makes the best coffee I've ever tasted, as he used to say to Selma. "How did you get in here?" Lena asked, surprised. "Your neighbor from 302 recognized me and insisted on opening the gate," he replied with an embarrassed smile. "I think I need to be more discreet when I visit." Selma took the flowers with a knowing smile and left the kitchen, leaving the two alone. The aroma of stew filled the room, creating an oddly domestic atmosphere for a scene involving a billionaire in his Italian suit. "What's this?" Lena asked, pointing to the folder. "Information about a project I'm developing," he replied, sitting down at the small kitchen table. "I want to transform the Villa Esperanza Health Center into a reference center for early diagnosis of heart disease." Lena dropped the knife, staring at him with a mixture of surprise and suspicion. "Why?" "Because some people need opportunities, not charity," he quoted her own words. "And because that doctor who saved me 20 years ago taught me that true medicine knows no class." Before Lena could answer, her cell phone rang. It was the number for the central hospital. Her hands were shaking so much that Arthur had to pick up the phone and answer it for her, putting it on speakerphone. "Miss Santos?" Dr. Helena's voice sounded formal. "I regret to inform you that the residency position has been filled by another candidate." The world seemed to collapse around Lena. She leaned against the sink, feeling the air leaving her lungs. But the doctor wasn't finished. "However, your advocacy on ethics and social commitment during the interview impressed us deeply. We have an extraordinary position opening in our congenital heart disease research program, focusing on underserved communities. We would like to invite you to lead the project." Silent tears streamed down Lena's face as Dr. Helena explained the details. It wasn't the surgical residency she'd dreamed of, but it was an opportunity to make a difference exactly where she needed it most. When the call ended, she found Arthur smiling in a way she had never seen before. "No mask, no armor. Did you know that?" she asked suspiciously. "The result? No. But did you know that people like you always find their way even when the doors seem closed?" He stepped closer, taking her trembling hands in his. "Now, how about we turn that health center into something Raphael would be proud of?" In that moment, looking at their clasped hands and smelling the home-cooked food in the air, Lena realized that sometimes dreams don't come true exactly as we plan. Sometimes they turn into something even more meaningful. The Health Center in Villa Esperanza was abuzz with activity that Monday morning. Lena watched the renovations underway with a mixture of pride and apprehension. In just 2 months, the facility had been transformed. New diagnostic equipment arrived daily, the walls were brightly colored, and a team specializing in pediatric cardiology was being formed. "Dr. Lena," called Marina, an 8-year-old girl who regularly attended the clinic, "is it true that now we're going to have equipment just like the one in the big hospital?" Lena smiled, bending down to the child's level. "Yes, Marina. And do you know why? Because all children deserve the best care, no matter where they live." A buzz at the entrance caught his attention. Arthur had arrived for another project supervision visit, but this time he was not alone. An elegant woman accompanied him, wearing sunglasses even indoors. There was something familiar about her features, an undeniable resemblance to Arthur. "Lena," he called to her, his voice carrying an unusual tension, "I want you to meet my sister, Clara." Clara removed her glasses, revealing eyes identical to her brother's but filled with a deep sadness. "So you're the famous doctor who's revolutionizing this place," she commented, her soft voice contrasting with her defensive posture. "Just trying to make a difference," Lena replied, sensing the unease in the air. "Want to see our facilities?" During the tour of the clinic, Lena noticed how Clara took a special interest in the pediatric ward. Her eyes lingered on the children waiting to be seen, and her hands occasionally touched her belly in a seemingly unconscious gesture. "Do you have children, Clara?" Lena asked gently. The silence that followed was heavy. Arthur touched his sister's shoulder in a protective gesture, but she gently pushed him away. "I had a son," Clara replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "Miguel, he passed away 5 years ago because of a medical error." Lena's heart sank. Now she understood Arthur's initial resistance to the health field, his general distrust. "That's why I isolated myself," Clara continued, surprising her own brother with her openness. "Arthur tried to convince me to sue the hospital, but I just wanted to disappear. To this day, he carries that guilt for not having done more." "Clara, we don't need to talk about this," Arthur interrupted, his mask of self-control threatening to crack. "We do, Arthur," she insisted, turning to Lena. "Do you know why I came today? Because my brother won't stop talking about this project, about how you're transforming the system that has failed so many families like ours." Lena felt the weight of those words. It wasn't just about Rafael or Miguel, it was about all the children the system had failed to protect. "Come with me," she said suddenly, taking Clara's hand. "I want to show you something." He led them into a newly renovated room where several photos adorned the walls. They were pictures of smiling children, some clearly recovering from surgery, others in follow-up appointments. "This is our gallery of hope," Lena explained. "Each photo represents a story we can change. We can't bring back those we've lost, but we can honor their memories by saving other lives." Clara touched one of the photos, her fingers trembling slightly. "How do you do it?" she asked. "How do you keep from giving up when things go wrong?" "Because every child we save is a victory over the system that failed our brothers," Lena replied, including Arthur in her gaze, "and because sometimes we need to turn our pain into purpose." At that moment, something changed in Clara's gaze. It was as if a window, long closed, was slowly beginning to open. "Do you need volunteers?" she asked hesitantly. I was a teacher before. Well, before." Arthur looked at his sister with astonishment and barely contained emotion. It was the first time in years that she had shown interest in anything other than her isolation. "We always need people who understand the pain of the families who come here," Lena replied with a warm smile. "How about we start with a few hours a week?" Autumn arrived, bringing significant changes to the health center. Clara had become a constant presence, coordinating a support program for the families of children undergoing treatment. Her transformation was visible. Her eyes, once dull with sadness, now shone with renewed purpose. On a particularly busy afternoon, Lena watched from her living room window as Clara led a story time with the children waiting for their appointments. Arthur was at her side, reviewing the project's financial reports. "Your sister is amazing with them," Lena commented, smiling as she saw a little girl spontaneously hug Clara. "You're amazing," Arthur replied, dropping the papers on the table. "You're the one who brought my sister back to life." "No, Arthur. Clara has always had this strength within her. Sometimes we just need a reason to rediscover who we are." The moment was interrupted by an urgent knock on the door. It was Donna Zaria, one of the oldest community health agents at the post. "Doctor, there's a delicate situation at the reception desk," she said, concerned. "A reporter from the newspaper is doing a story about the disrepair of health clinics. In the region, he wants to interview you." Lena and Arthur exchanged apprehensive glances. The project was still in its early stages, and negative media coverage could jeopardize all the work that had been done. "I'll handle it," Arthur said, standing up. But Lena stopped him. "No, this is my battle." At the reception, the reporter and his cameraman were already recording images of the construction in progress. Upon seeing Lena, he immediately pointed the microphone at her. "Doctor, how do you explain the contrast between this health center, which is receiving state-of-the-art equipment, and the others in the region that barely have Band-Aids? Wouldn't this be a case of privilege and inequality?" Lena took a deep breath, remembering all the struggles that had brought her to this point. "What you see as privilege, I see as an example," she replied firmly. "This position is becoming a model for what all others should be. We are not creating inequality. We are showing that it is possible to do things differently." "And how? Do you respond to the accusations that your personal relationship with businessman Arthur Delval influenced investments in this specific location?" Lena's heart raced, but her voice remained calm. "Sir, I grew up depending on the hospital. I lost my brother due to a lack of early diagnosis. I've been volunteering here for years, long before I met any investors. If you really want to help, how about doing a story on how the private sector can contribute to improving public health?" The reporter hesitated, clearly not expecting that answer. That was when Clara approached, still surrounded by some children. "Do you want a real story?" she asked the reporter. "Then get this straight. I lost my son due to a medical error in a private hospital. Here in this place that you call privileged, children from humble families are receiving the care that my Miguel, with all our money, did not have. This is not privilege. This is justice." A deep silence fell over the reception. The cameraman continued filming, capturing the moment when one of the children took Clara's hand and asked innocently, "Auntie, was Miguel your little angel?" The tears in Clara's eyes were no longer of pain, but of found purpose. "Yes, dear, and now he helps. Me take care of all of you." The reporter lowered his microphone, visibly moved. "I think we have a different story to tell," he said, signaling for the cameraman to change the angle of the recording. That night, after the station closed, Lena found Arthur sitting alone in the Gallery of Hope, staring at the photographs. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, sitting down beside him. "How you changed everything," he replied, his voice husky with emotion. "Not just this place, but us. Me, Clara. It's like you taught us to turn our losses into something bigger than ourselves." The report about the health center in Villa Esperanza went viral on social media. What began as an attempt to denounce, the situation became a symbol of hope and the possibility of change in the public health system. Lena's phone kept ringing. Journalists, politicians, and even other business people were interested in replicating the model. "I never imagined it would come to this," Lena told Selma over breakfast, noting her photo on the front page of the local newspaper. The headline read, "From Cleaner to Doctor, the story behind the revolution in public health." "I figured," Selma replied with a proud smile. "Ever since you were little, I've always known you'd do something extraordinary." The cell phone vibrated again. It was a message from Dr. Helena at Central Hospital. "We need to talk. Can you come to my office today?" Lena's heart raced. Despite the success of the project at the health center, she still felt a pang of frustration at not having been accepted into the surgical residency program. She put on her best blazer and headed to the hospital, trying to control her anxiety. Dr. Helena greeted her with a different expression than last time. There was a glint of admiration in her eyes. "I saw your interview," she began, gesturing to a chair. "And I've been following your work at the health center closely. You've turned a research project into something much bigger." "I just tried to make a difference where I could," Lena replied modestly. "And that's exactly why I'm calling you here." The doctor leaned forward. "We're restructuring our residency program. We want to include a mandatory community medicine component, and we'd like you to coordinate that part." Lena blinked in surprise. "But I don't even have the residency yet." "Sometimes practical experience is worth more than degrees," Dr. Helena smiled. "Besides, we're opening a new surgical residency position. If you're still interested." The words hung in the air, full of possibilities. Lena felt tears forming in her eyes, but she held them back. "Can I think about it for a moment?" he asked, his voice shaking slightly. "Sure, but don't take too long. We have a board meeting next week, and I'd like to put your name forward." Leaving the hospital, Lena walked aimlessly through the busy streets of the city center. Her dream was there, within reach, but something had changed. She had changed. Her feet unconsciously took her to the building where Arthur's office was. She didn't know why she was there, but she felt the need to share that moment with him. At reception, the secretary recognized her immediately. Her picture was in all the newspapers, after all. "Mr. Del Valle is in an important meeting," she informed him. "But he left instructions that you should always be received." In the large office overlooking the city, Lena was observing the urban landscape when the door opened. Arthur entered, looking tired, but his eyes lit up when he saw her. "What a nice surprise," he smiled, loosening his tie. "I really needed a break from this endless meeting. I got an offer today," she said, getting straight to the point. "Central Hospital is offering a surgical residency position, and they want me to coordinate a new community medicine program." Arthur was silent for a moment, studying her face. "And why do you look more worried than happy?" "Because," Lena hesitated, organizing her thoughts. "What if I can't do everything? The health center is just starting to show some results. The families trust us. Clara is finally recovering. And you feel like you have to choose between the two worlds," he added, understanding her anguish. "Maybe, I don't know." She ran her hands over her face in frustration. "When I lost Raphael, I promised myself I would do everything I could to prevent other families from going through the same thing. I thought that meant becoming a surgeon, but now you've discovered that there are many ways to save lives." Arthur approached, touching her shoulder gently. "Do you know what Clara told me yesterday? That for the first time in 5 years, she can think about Miguel without feeling like she's suffocating. That's also a form of healing, Lena. What would you do in my place?" "Me?" He laughed softly. "I'd probably create a flowchart of pros and cons, calculate every possible variable, and still make the wrong decision. Because some choices aren't about logic. They're about what makes us feel alive." The week leading up to the board meeting was a whirlwind of emotions and reflections for Lena. Every visit to the health center, every smile from the children, every grateful hug from the parents weighed heavily on her decision. On the eve of the meeting, an unexpected event changed everything. Marina, the little patient who always greeted her with a smile, arrived at the clinic with worrying symptoms. Her lips were slightly purple, and she tired easily, signs that Lena knew all too well. "We need to run some tests," she explained to Marina's mother, trying to keep her voice calm as her heart hammered in her chest. The new equipment at the clinic allowed a quick diagnosis. It was a congenital heart defect, similar to the one that had taken Raphael. "What's the next step, doctor?" the mother asked, holding her daughter's hand tightly. Lena felt the weight of that question. In other times, that family would have had to wait months for a specialist consultation, as happened with her brother. But now, "I'm going to make some calls," he replied, already picking up the phone. An hour later, Artur arrived at the clinic, accompanied by Dr. Helena and a team from the Central Hospital. Marina's case had become an unexpected bridge between Lena's two worlds. "This is a perfect case for corrective surgery," Dr. Helena explained after examining the girl. If we act now, the chances of success are excellent." "But we don't have health insurance," Marina's mother intervened, distressed. "Careful, and the line at the hospital—" "Don't worry about it," Arthur interrupted gently. "The Institute will cover all costs." As the team prepared Marina's transfer, Clara appeared in the room, bringing her special way of calming children. Within minutes, she had Marina laughing with a story about a brave princess who had to make a magical trip to the hospital. Lena watched the scene, feeling the pieces fall into place in her mind. All the elements of her journey were there: the highly complex medicine at the central hospital, the humane welcome at the health center, the transformative power of the Institute, the healing that went beyond medical procedures. "Have you made your decision yet?" Arthur asked quietly, approaching her. "Yes," she replied, her eyes fixed on Marina, who was now showing her doll to Clara. "I will accept both proposals." "Both?" He arched an eyebrow in surprise. "The clinic taught me that medicine is not just about technique. It's about connection, about understanding people beyond their symptoms," she explained. "And surgery. Well, some lives need to be saved on the operating table. I can't choose between the two because they complement each other." "And how do you intend to manage all of this?" "With help," she smiled, looking at him meaningfully. "The clinic already has an amazing team. Clara is doing a wonderful job with the families. And now we have an official partnership with the Central Hospital. It's time to trust the people around me a little more." Arthur took her hand, intertwining his fingers with hers. It was the first time he had shown affection so explicitly. "Do you know what I admire most about you?" he asked, his voice husky with emotion. "Your ability to see possibilities where others see limitations, to turn tragedy into purpose." "I learned that from a cleaning lady who decided to raise an orphaned girl," Lena replied, thinking of Selma, "and from a businessman who chose to use his power to make a difference, even when it meant facing his own traumas." At that moment, Marina ran past them, dragging Clara by the hand to show her the new pediatric wing of the clinic. Her smile was radiant, unafraid of what was to come. "I think we've found our mission," Arthur said, surveying the scene. "It's not just about saving lives, it's about giving them a chance to smile again." Lena squeezed her hand in response. "Sometimes the most important choices are not between right and wrong, but between different ways of doing good. And maybe, just maybe, the real miracle lies in finding people who help us realize all our dreams, even the ones that seem incompatible." The first few months of her new routine were intense. Lena divided her days between surgeries at the Central Hospital and coordinating the community program. Her nights were dedicated to studying and planning the health center's activities. The tiredness was visible on her face, but there was a different kind of sparkle in her eyes, the sparkle of someone who had finally found their way. On a particularly busy morning, Lena observed her first pediatric heart surgery as a resident. Dr. Helena guided her hands with precision, teaching each movement with the patience of someone who recognizes a natural talent. "You have the touch, Lena," the doctor commented at the end of the successful procedure. "It's like your hands know exactly what to do." Leaving the operating room, still euphoric about the success of the operation, Lena met Selma in the hallway. Her adoptive mother was now working as a nursing assistant at the hospital, having finally realized her own dream of studying. "How was it, daughter?" Selma asked, her eyes shining with pride. "It was magical, Mom," Lena replied, hugging her tightly. "Every second in there reminded me of Raphael. It was like he was guiding me." The moment was interrupted by a group of medical residents who were passing by, whispering among themselves. Lena caught fragments of their conversations. He got the job through connections. Dating the billionaire. Everything was made easy. Selma noticed her daughter stiffen. "Don't listen to them, dear. Small people will always try to diminish those who shine." "Sometimes I wonder if I'm really ready for all this," Lena confessed quietly. "What if they're right? What if I'm dividing too much time between the hospital and the clinic?" "Come with me." Selma pulled her by the hand, leading her to the pediatric ward. There in the recovery area was Marina, the girl they had operated on weeks ago. She was playing happily with other children, her face flushed and full of life. AI, stark contrast to the purple-lipped girl who had arrived at the clinic. "See that girl?" Selma pointed. "She's alive because you didn't choose just one path, because you had the courage to build bridges where others see walls." At that moment, Lena's cell phone vibrated. It was a message from Arta. "I need you at the emergency room. We have a situation." Lena's heart raced. After quickly changing her clothes, she headed to the health center, her mind buzzing with worries. She found Arthur at the entrance, his face a mask of controlled concern. "What's wrong?" she asked. Alarmed. "We received a notification from the Ministry of Health," he replied, guiding her to his office. "Apparently someone reported irregularities in the project. They are questioning the public-private partnership, suggesting that there is personal favoritism involved." Lena felt her blood run cold. "But everything was done within the law. We have all the documents, the authorizations." "Yes, we do," Arthur interrupted her gently. "But we also have enemies. People who don't like to see the system challenged, who prefer to keep things as they are." Clara entered the room at that moment, carrying a thick folder of documents. "I've already started organizing all the project documentation," she said. "Every penny invested, every procedure performed, every life impacted." Lena looked at the two brothers, feeling a surge of gratitude. In just a few months, they had become much more than project partners. They were her extended family, people who shared not only her dreams, but also her struggles. "I won't let them destroy everything we've built," she declared, her voice firm. "This isn't just about me or you. It's about every child who's walked through those doors, every family who's found hope here." Arthur came closer, touching her face gently. "We know, Lena, and that's why we're going to fight. Together." His touch sent an electric current through her body. There, in that simple room at the health center, surrounded by people who believed in the same dream, Lena understood that some battles can only be won when we open our hearts to other warriors. Days following the complaint were filled with intense work. Lena, Arthur, and Clara immersed themselves in a marathon of meetings with lawyers, auditors, and representatives from the Ministry of Health. Each document was reviewed in detail, each a procedure justified, each investment explained. "Look at this," Clara said. One evening as they reviewed reports, "In just 6 months, we've made over 200 early diagnoses of heart disease. We've been able to get all of these children on the right track for treatment. And we reduced the waiting time for specialist appointments in the region by 80%, Arthur added, running his hands through his already disheveled hair. "How can anyone see anything wrong with that?" Lena watched the siblings work together, amazed at their transformation. Clara, who had previously been reclusive in her grief, was now brimming with purpose. Arthur, who had built his fortune by thinking only about numbers, now spoke about social impact with genuine passion. "We need to show more than numbers," she said suddenly. "We need to show the faces, the stories behind the statistics." That's how the idea for the documentary was born. With the help of the same reporter who had previously tried to expose the project negatively, they began collecting testimonies from the families they helped. Each story was a powerful testament to the impact of the work they had done. During the recordings, Selma surprised everyone with her emotional testimony. "I lost my first child to a system that didn't work. But I gained a daughter who decided to fix that system, not just for herself, but for everyone." During a break in filming, Lena found Arthur alone in the Gallery of Hope, looking at the new photos that had been added. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, stopping beside him. "How unpredictable life is," he replied, turning to her. "You know, I built an empire based on technology, always believing that progress was in algorithms, in digital innovations. But you showed me that real progress is in people, in the connections we create. You've taught me a lot too," Lena admitted softly. "You've shown me that sometimes we need resources and influence to do good on a large scale, that there's no shame in accepting help when the goal is bigger than ourselves." Arthur came closer, taking her hands in his. "Lena, I need to tell you something." Her heart raced at the intensity of his gaze. "All my life I built walls around myself. After Clara lost Miguel, those walls grew even higher. I convinced myself that success and power were the only things that mattered, that feelings were a weakness. "What now?" she asked in a whisper. "Now I understand that true strength lies in being vulnerable, in allowing yourself to feel, in fighting for something bigger than yourself." He touched her face gently. "You taught me that, you know, with your dedication, your integrity, your ability to love unconditionally." The moment was interrupted by Clara, who ran into the gallery. "You have to see this," she exclaimed, waving some papers. "The health department audit is over. Not only have we been cleared of all charges, but our model is being recommended for implementation in other regions of the country." The news was more than a victory. It was the validation of a shared dream. Lena felt tears of joy stream down her face as Clara hugged her. "This calls for a celebration," Arthur declared, his eyes shining in a new way. "How about dinner? Just us. I mean, all of us. You, me, Clara, Selma." Lena laughed at his sudden nervousness. It was adorable to see the powerful businessman stumbling over his words like a teenager. "Dinner would be perfect," she replied, exchanging a knowing look with Clara, who smiled knowingly. That night, as she watched the people she loved gather, around the table, Lena thought about how life had a curious way of putting the broken pieces back together and transforming them into something new and beautiful. How small acts of courage could trigger profound transformations. How love, in all its forms, was the true engine of change. The success of the project in Villa Esperanza began to attract international attention. One spring morning, Lena received an email that made her heart race. It was an invitation from the Berlin Center for Pediatric Cardiovascular Research to a presentation of the model developed in the country. 3 months in Germany," she murmured, rereading the invitation for the third time. The opportunity was extraordinary. In addition to the presentation, they offered an exchange program with access to the most advanced surgical techniques in the world. Selma found her daughter still absorbed in her email during lunch they had together every Thursday in the hospital cafeteria. "You're acting strange, daughter," he commented, watching Lena play with her food without actually eating it. "What happened?" Lena explained the invitation, her words coming out in a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. "It's a unique opportunity, Mum, but how can I leave everything here? The health center, the surgeries, the families who trust us?" "And Arthur?" Selma asked softly, an understanding smile on her lips. The blush on Lena's cheeks was answer enough. In the last few weeks, her relationship with Arthur had evolved into something deeper than friendship, although neither of them had put it into words yet. "He, more than anyone, would understand the importance of this opportunity," Lena replied, but her voice betrayed her uncertainty. "You know what Raphael always said." Selma took his hand across the table, "that you were too strong to settle for less than your dreams." The words hit Lena like a hug from the past. Raphael, her little brother, had always been her biggest supporter. But what if pursuing that dream means losing others? "Or maybe it means discovering which dreams are truly yours," Selma replied wisely. That afternoon, during a particularly complex surgery, Lena found herself thinking about her mother's words. Her hands moved with precision over the small heart that was struggling to survive, while her mind wandered between Berlin and Villa Esperanza. After the surgery, he found Clara organizing a surprise party for one of the children at the clinic who had just been discharged. "How do you do that?" Lena asked, watching her transform the waiting room with colorful balloons and ribbons. "What? Finding joy even after so much pain." Clara stopped what she was doing, turning to face her. "You were the one who taught me, remember? That pain. Sagan turn into purpose." "What if I need to leave for a while?" Lena asked hesitantly. "What if there's an opportunity to learn more, to bring new techniques to help more children?" "Then we'd hold the fort here," Clara replied without hesitation, "because that's what family does." The word family echoed in Lena's heart. At some point, without realizing it, she had created bonds that went far beyond work. At the end of the day, he went up to the hospital terrace, his favorite place to think. To his surprise, he found Arthur there, contemplating the sunset. "How did you know you'd find me here?" she asked, coming closer. "I didn't know," he replied with a smile. Maybe we've developed a habit of seeking the same refuges." They were silent for a moment, watching the sky turn pink and orange. "I received an invitation today," Lena began, her voice shaking slightly, "from the Berlin Pediatric Cardiovascular Research Center." Artur didn't seem surprised. "I know. They contacted me first, wanting to know more about the project. And you didn't tell me?" "Because it had to be your choice," he replied simply. "No influences, no pressure." Lena felt tears forming in her eyes. 3 months is a long time. "Not when compared to a lifetime," Arthur replied, turning to face her. "Lena, since you came into my life, I've learned that true love isn't about possession. It's about wanting to see the other person grow, shine, and achieve their dreams. Even if it means leaving." "Even if it means leaving," he confirmed, taking her hands in his. "Because I know you'll always come back to where your heart belongs." It was at that moment, with the sun setting over the city she loved so much, that Lena understood. Sometimes you have to allow yourself to fly to discover where your nest really is. The weeks leading up to the trip to Berlin were a whirlwind of preparations and emotions. Lena dedicated herself to organizing every detail of the health center, creating protocols, and ensuring that nothing would be interrupted in her absence. Clara would take over the coordination of the social program, while Dr. Helena would oversee the medical side. During her last week in the country during a staff meeting, Lena was surprised by a special presentation. The families served by the clinic had organized a video with messages of thanks and encouragement. "The doctor saved my Marina," said an emotional mother. "Now she will help other children around the world, but she will always be our guardian angel." The video ended with the children singing a song about brave hearts, composed especially by Clara. There wasn't a dry eye in the room when the lights came up. "You guys are impossible," Lena laughed through her tears, hugging each team member. The night before the flight, Arthur had arranged an intimate dinner at his penthouse. Just the two of them, the city twinkling below like a carpet of stars. "I have something for you," he said, handing her a small box. Inside was a delicate necklace with a heart-shaped pendant. But it was no ordinary heart. It was a perfect, anatomical representation, studded with tiny diamonds. To remember that some hearts, even separated by distance, never stop beating for each other, he explained, helping her put on the jewel. "Arthur, Lena began, but he interrupted her gently. "Don't say anything yet," he urged, his eyes shining with suppressed emotion. "Save the important words for when you get back. Because you will, won't you?" "Of course," she replied, touching the pendant. "I have many reasons to return." Dinner was served on the balcony under an exceptionally starry sky. They talked about the future, about the project's expansion plans, about the lives they could still touch. But there were also long moments of comfortable silence, where only their gazes said everything that needed to be said. The next morning, the airport was full of familiar faces. Selma, Clara, the staff at the hospital, some patients and their families. Everyone came to say goodbye. Even Dr. Helena showed up, bringing another surprise. "Central Hospital will implement its integrated care model across all units," she announced. "When you return, we want you to lead this transformation process." Arthur was quiet, a little away from the crowd. When the final moment of farewell came, he just hugged her tightly, whispering in her ear, "Go shine, my doctor of brave hearts." Once in the boarding area, Lena took one last look at the group that remained. She saw Selma, her first teacher of compassion, Clara, who had transformed her own pain into strength to help others, and Artur, the man who had learned to break down his walls for love. Touching the pendant around her neck, Lena smiled through her tears. She wasn't just leaving to learn new medical techniques. She was leaving to grow stronger, to become even more capable of achieving her dreams. Her phone vibrated with a final message from Arthur. "Remember what you taught me. Sometimes we need to allow ourselves to be vulnerable in order to become stronger. And know that here in this little health clinic, that you have turned into a beacon of hope. There will always be a heart waiting for your return." As she walked to the gate, Lena thought about Raphael, about how proud he would be to see his older sister flying so high. She thought about all the children who still needed to be saved, about all the smiles that still needed to be returned. 3 months seemed like an eternity. But for someone who had already waited a lifetime to realize their dreams, it was just a small interval between one heartbeat and the next. The Berlin winter was harsher than any cold Lena had ever experienced. But inside the Pediatric Cardiovascular Research Center, the atmosphere was welcoming and vibrant. Doctors from different countries shared knowledge, innovative techniques were discussed daily, and each successful case was celebrated as a collective victory. Their model of hospital community integration is fascinating, said Dr. Klaus Weber, the center's director, during one of the meetings. It's exactly the kind of approach we need to implement globally. Lena was presenting the results of the Hope Village project to an international audience. The photos in the Hope Gallery drew excited gasps, and the numbers were impressive. An 80% reduction in waiting times for diagnoses and 0 deaths from undiagnosed heart disease in the region since the program began. But true success is not in the numbers, she explained, showing the video of the families. It's in the transformation of lives, in the hope restored, in the dignity returned. After the presentation, a South African doctor approached her with tears in her eyes. "We desperately need a program like this in our country. How did you get the initial funding?" Lena smiled, instinctively touching the pendant around her neck. "Sometimes all we need is to find people who share our dream of making a difference." Nighttime video calls were her favorite time of day. Clara always had exciting news about the health center. "Guess what?" she exclaimed in one of these conversations. "Selma started a support program for mothers of hospitalized children. She teaches them how to make crafts so they can earn money while they are hospitalized." "What about Arthur?" Lena asked, trying to sound casual. "My brother is impossible," Clara laughed. "He spends more time at the clinic than in his own office. Yesterday I found him reading stories to the children in the pediatric ward." The image of the powerful businessman sitting on the floor surrounded by children made Lena's heart ache with longing. The weeks in Berlin passed quickly, filled with intense learning. Lena absorbed each new surgical technique, each innovative protocol, imagining how she could adapt them to the local reality. One particularly cold afternoon, while he was observing an experimental surgery, his phone vibrated with an urgent message from Clara. "We need you on a video call. It's about Jonas." Jonas was one of the most complex cases at the clinic, a 5-year-old boy with a rare heart condition that local specialists had not yet been able to fully resolve. In the video call, he met not only the team at the clinic, but also Dr. Klaus and other specialists from Berlin who had become interested in the case after his presentation. "What if we combined teams?" Dr. Klaus suggested. "We could perform the surgery there, sharing our experience with the innovative technique we developed here." "An international surgery?" Arthur, who was on the call, asked excitedly. "The institute could cover all the logistics costs. And I could coordinate the post-operative protocols," Clara added. "I already have experience with the family." Lena watched the screen, amazed at how everyone came together naturally, each contributing their specific skills. It was exactly what she had always dreamed of, a medicine without borders, where knowledge and compassion came together to save lives. "It would be in 3 weeks, Dr. Klaus explained. "Coincidentally, when you will be returning to your country, Dr. Lena." Her heart raced. 3 weeks. It seemed so long and so little at the same time. That night, alone in her small apartment in Berlin, Lena received a message from Arthur. "Today, one of the children asked me why the smile doctor had left. I explained that you were learning new ways to make hearts smile too." She thought for a moment and said, "Okay then, but tell her not to take too long, because there are a lot of hearts here that need to smile." Lena smiled through the tears that were forming. She picked up her journal where she had begun to write down all the ideas and techniques she had learned and wrote on the last page, "Sometimes we need to step back to see the bigger picture. Berlin taught me revolutionary surgical techniques, but it also showed me that what we have built in Villa Esperanza is unique and special, not because it is perfect, but because it is made with love, dedication, and shared purpose. The news of the international surgery stirred up the entire central hospital. Dr. Helena personally coordinated the preparations, transforming the surgical center to receive the German team. Jonas's case had become a symbol of hope and international cooperation. "It's amazing how a single child can unite so many people," commented Selma, as she helped organize preparations to welcome the foreign doctors. At the health center, Clara had transformed the waiting room into a welcoming space for the families who would be attending the surgery. "We want everyone to feel part of this historic moment," she explained during a video call with Lena. Arthur, in turn, surprised everyone by announcing the creation of an international fund for complex pediatric heart surgeries. "If we can do this for Jonas, we can do it for other children too," he declared during a press conference. In Berlin, Lena lived her last days of learning with redoubled intensity. Every procedure observed, every technique learned could make a difference not only for Jonas, but for so many other children. "You have transformed our view of community medicine," Dr. Klaus said during their last meeting. "Your project has proven that technical excellence and humanization are not mutually exclusive." On the eve of her return during a farewell dinner with the German team, Lena received an unexpected call from Arthur. "I needed to tell you in person," his voice conveyed restrained emotion. "Remember that doctor who saved me when I had hepatitis? I just found out he still practices and is the current director of the health center next door to ours." "How did you find out about that?" Lena asked, surprised. "He came to the clinic today wanting to learn about our work. When he saw me, he recognized me immediately." Arthur paused. "Lena, he wants to implement our model at his clinic. He said he always dreamed of creating an integrated care network, but never had the necessary resources." "And what did you answer?" "That we were waiting for our Braveheart doctor to come back so we could expand the project." His voice softened. "You changed more than just lives, you know. You changed the way people view public health." That evening, on her last walk through Berlin, Lena walked to the wall, that historic symbol of separation that had become art and unity. Touching the pendant around her neck, she thought about how sometimes we need to build bridges where there were once walls. Her phone buzzed with a text from Clara. "I just left Jonas. He drew you something." The photo showed a colorful drawing of several hearts, some with band-aids, some smiling, and in the center, a figure in a lab coat that could only be Lena. "He said that's all the hearts you're going to fix when you get back," Clara explained. "And you know what? His mom told me that since he found out about the surgery, he doesn't talk about being afraid anymore. He says he's going to be brave like the Smile Doctor." Tears blurred Lena's vision as she put her phone away. In a few hours, she would be returning home, not just to a major surgery, but to all the people who had become her extended family, to a project that had grown beyond her initial dreams, to a love that had patiently awaited her return. The best doctors are those who understand that healing goes beyond technique, Dr. Klaus had said in his last lecture. It's about creating connections, inspiring hope, transforming realities. Looking one last time at the starry sky of Berlin, Lena smiled. She had set out in search of technical knowledge, but she was returning with much more. The certainty that the true miracle of medicine happens when we combine competence with compassion, when we allow our hearts to guide our hands, when we transform our own pain into instruments of healing for others. And most importantly, I was coming back with the understanding that some loves are like certain surgeries, precise, transformative, and capable of making hearts beat at a completely new rhythm. The international airport was particularly busy that Thursday morning. The German medical team, led by Dr. Klaus, had arrived the day before, and now it was Lena's turn to return. Her heart was beating fast as she walked through the arrivals gate, dragging her suitcase full of books, notes, and most importantly, renewed dreams. The first person she saw was Clara, holding a colorful sign that read, "Welcome, Doctor of Smiles," clearly the work of the children at the health center. Beside her, Selma was barely holding back her tears, but it was the figure of Arthur, a little further back, that made her heart almost stop. He looked different. It wasn't just the stubble on his face, or the fact that he had replaced his suit with a casual shirt. There was something in his gaze, a softness she'd never seen before. "Welcome back," he said simply as he approached, but his hands shook slightly as he held hers. The moment was interrupted by a small commotion. Jonas and his family had insisted on coming to welcome her. The boy ran towards her, hugging her legs tightly. "Doctor, I grew up while you were away," he exclaimed proudly. "And look, I learned how to draw anatomical hearts just like that necklace of yours." Lena bent down to his level, noticing how his cheeks were more flushed, his smile more confident. "Are you ready for our big surgery tomorrow?" "Yes," he replied without hesitation. "Uncle Arthur explained everything to me. He said it's going to be like a world championship for doctors, except instead of a trophy, the prize is to make my heart stronger." The simplicity and wisdom of a 5-year-old's explanation moved everyone. Arthur blushed slightly when Lena looked at him, surprised by the affectionate way Jonas called him. On the way to the hospital, where a pre-operative meeting had already been scheduled, Lena looked out the car window at the city, noticing how everything seemed both familiar and different. Or maybe it was she who was different. "A lot has changed while you were away," Arthur commented, as if reading his thoughts. "The project has expanded faster than we imagined. That doctor I told you about, Dr. Roger, brought incredible ideas for integrating health centers." "And you?" she asked softly. "What's changed in you?" He was silent for a moment, his eyes fixed. "On the road. I realized that I had spent my entire life building companies, when what I really wanted to do was build bridges. Between people, between dreams, between possibilities." At the Central Hospital, the meeting with the teams was intense. Dr. Klaus presented Jonas's latest exams, while Dr. Helena explained the adaptations made to the surgical center to accommodate the special equipment brought from Germany. "The technique we're going to use is revolutionary," Dr. Klaus explained. "But the real difference will be the integration between the teams. It's like an orchestra. Each instrument is important, but it's the harmony between them that creates the music." After the meeting, Lena made a point of visiting the health center. The place was even more welcoming than before. The walls displayed new drawings, and the Gallery of Hope had practically doubled in size. "It was Clara's idea," Selma explained, pointing out a new space dedicated to stories of overcoming adversity. "She started a project to document the families who come here, not just the medical aspects, but their emotional journeys as well." At the end of the day, exhausted but happy, Lena found a moment of quiet in the break room. She was reviewing her surgery notes when Arthur walked in, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "I thought you might need this," he smiled, handing her one of the cups. "Do you still have that habit of studying late before big procedures?" "Some things never change," she replied, accepting the coffee gratefully. "And others change completely," he added, sitting down next to her. "You know, in these 3 months, every time I walked into the clinic and saw a child smiling, I thought about how you transform not only this place but all of us. Me especially." Lena felt her heart race. There was so much to be said, so many emotions held back during those months apart. "Arthur, No," he interrupted her gently. "Tomorrow is too important a day. We have a historic surgery ahead of us, a child waiting for a miracle, 2 medical teams ready to make history. Then we'll have all the time in the world for the words we've been saving." She nodded, understanding. Some things, like delicate surgeries and deep feelings, needed the right timing to be carried out successfully. The morning of the surgery dawned with a soft sun, as if the sky itself wanted to bring serenity to that historic day. At the Central Hospital, 2 medical teams were preparing in perfect synchrony, while at the health center, Clara organized a special vigil with the families who were following Jonas's case. Lena found the little patient in his room, already prepared for the procedure. He was holding tightly a new drawing, a large red heart surrounded by small, colorful hearts. "It's for you to take to the operating room," he explained seriously. That way you won't forget that there are a lot of hearts rooting for mine. Moved, she put the drawing in her lab coat pocket. At the bedroom door, Jonas's parents hugged her tightly. "Thank you for bringing hope from so far away," his mother whispered. In the operating room, the teams lined up like a well-tuned orchestra. Dr. Klaus would take the lead in the procedure, with Lena as first assistant, an honor that reflected his technical growth during his time in Berlin. "Remember what we talked about?" Dr. Klaus asked as they prepared. "About how medicine is a bridge between science and humanity?" Lena nodded, adjusting her instruments. "Today we will build that bridge in Jonas's heart, and you, my young colleague, are living proof that it is possible to combine technical excellence with true compassion." The following hours were spent in absolute concentration. The new technique developed in Berlin allowed for a less invasive approach, but required millimetric precision. Every movement was calculated, every decision discussed between the teams. Halfway through the procedure, when they reached the most delicate moment, Lena felt the weight of the drawing in the pocket of her lab coat. She took a deep breath, remembering all the hearts that were beating in tune at that moment, not just Jonas's, but everyone waiting outside. 4 hours later, the sweetest sound filled the room, the strong, rhythmic beating of the little heart, now free of the limitations that imprisoned it. Dr. Klaus smiled behind his mask, his eyes shining with satisfaction. "Perfect," he said simply. "Simply perfect." When Lena went out to break the news to the families, she found many more people than she had expected. The lobby was packed. Health center staff, old patients, family members, all united in waiting and hope. "The surgery was a success," she announced, her voice thick with emotion. "Jonas is fine and—" She couldn't finish her sentence. She was surrounded by hugs, tears of joy, expressions of gratitude. Clara filmed everything to add to the project documentation, while Selma distributed the snacks she had prepared for the occasion. In the midst of the celebration, Lena felt a strong hand hold hers. Arthur was there, his eyes filled with tears, making no attempt to hide his emotion. "Come with me," he urged softly, guiding her away from the crowd. In the quiet of the hospital garden, under the golden light of dusk, he finally let the words flow. "When you left for Berlin, I thought it would be the longest 3 months of my life," he began. "But then I began to see our work through your eyes. Every child served, every family welcomed, every small victory. Everything had your touch, your vision, your heart." Lena felt silent tears stream down her face as he continued. "I realized that you weren't just saving lives, you were teaching us how to truly live, to see beyond appearances, beyond prejudices, beyond fears." He touched the pendant around his neck. "This heart I gave you before I left, it represents much more than a feeling. It represents a transformation. My transformation." "Arthur, let me finish," he asked gently. "When Clara lost Miguel, I built walls around myself. When you came into my life disguised as a maid, I thought you were just another one trying to get close to me out of self-interest. But you didn't want to tear down my walls. You built bridges over them. And before I knew it, the walls didn't matter anymore." He knelt down, taking a small box from his pocket. Inside was a delicate ring with a small anatomical heart in ruby. "Lena Santos, you taught me that true love is not about possessing. It's about growing together, about turning pain into purpose, about building bridges where others see obstacles. Would you be willing to build that bridge for the rest of our lives?" At that moment, a sound of applause and whistles surprised them. Clara, Selma, and the entire hospital staff were on the hospital balcony watching the scene. Jonas, still drowsy from the anesthesia, had insisted on being taken to the window of his room to watch as well. Lena laughed through her tears, looking at all those people who had become her family, at the hospital that was her second home, at the man kneeling in front of her who had learned to transform power into compassion. "Yes," she replied simply. 1,000 times yes. And on that golden afternoon, as a small, newly healed heart beat strong in the room above, 2 other hearts joined in a promise to continue building bridges, saving lives and transforming realities. Because sometimes love is just that, the courage to allow another heart to beat alongside yours in the same rhythm of hope and purpose. A year had passed since Jonas's historic surgery. The Villa Esperanza Health Center had become the center of a true revolution in public health. The integrated care model now extended throughout the region, connecting 10 health centers in an efficient network of preventive and specialized care. On a sunny spring morning, Lena watched the activity in the new pediatric wing of the clinic. The walls, previously white and cold, now displayed a huge mural painted by Clara and the children, an explosion of colors representing hearts of all shapes and sizes. "Doctor!" Jonas's excited voice pulled her out of her thoughts. He was running towards her, carrying a colorful envelope. "I came to personally bring you your invitation." Lena smiled, taking the envelope decorated with heart designs. It was the invitation to the graduation party of the first class of the Little Doctors Project, an initiative created by Clara to teach children about health and prevention in a fun way. "I'm going to give a presentation about the heart," Jonas announced proudly. "Aunt Clara said I can wear the special lab coat Uncle Arthur had made for me." The boy had become a sort of mascot for the clinic. His miraculous recovery inspired other families, and his natural curiosity about medicine infected other children. "Doctor," he hesitated for a moment, "is it true that you're going to have a baby?" Lena gently touched her belly, still imperceptible under her lab coat. The news of her pregnancy, discovered only 2 weeks ago, was a secret that she and Arthur planned to reveal at the big celebration that was approaching, the first anniversary of the integrated network of health centers. "How did you find out?" she asked, surprised. "Well," he shrugged with the peculiar wisdom of children, "your heart is beating differently. Happier, you know, just like my mother's when she told me I was going to have a little sister." Lena laughed, amazed at the little boy's sensitivity. In fact, her heart had been beating differently since she discovered she was carrying a new life, a life that represented the union of 2 worlds that had once seemed so distant. The afternoon brought a special meeting in the auditorium of the Central Hospital. Doctors from several countries participated via video conference, interested in implementing the Hope Village model in their regions. Dr. Klaus, who now made regular visits to the country, coordinated the international expansion of the project. "The success of this initiative is not just about the impressive numbers," he explained to attendees. "It's about the paradigm shift. It's not about having the latest equipment, although that's important. It's about creating a network of care that starts in the heart of the community." As Lena watched the presentation, she felt a familiar presence at her side. Selma, now the coordinator of the family support program, discreetly held her hand. "Your mother and father would be so proud," she whispered. "And Raphael? Oh, Raphael would be over the moon to see his big sister fulfill his dream in such a grand way." "Our dream, Mother," Lena corrected gently. "It all started with you, with your courage to take in an orphaned, dreamy girl." At the end of the meeting, Arthur presented the newest phase of the project, the construction of a research and teaching center attached to the health center. The site would be dedicated to training professionals specialized in integrated community medicine. "And the best thing," he announced with a smile, "is that we already have our first scientific director, Dr. Clara Del Val, who has just completed her specialization in pediatric psychology." The news was greeted with enthusiastic applause. Clara, who had found her calling in working with families, was now transforming her own story of pain into a legacy of hope and knowledge. At the end of the day, as the sun was setting on the horizon, Lena found a moment of stillness in her favorite place, the hospital terrace. There, where so many important decisions had been made, she gazed out at the city that stretched out before her. Arthur met her there, as he always did in important moments. Without saying anything, he just hugged her from behind, his hands resting protectively on her belly. "What are you thinking about?" he asked softly. "How amazing life is," she replied, leaning back against him. 2 years ago, I was just a medical student trying to help my sick mother. Now you are the doctor who is changing the healthcare system, the wife who changed my life and the future mother of our child," he finished, kissing her temple. "Or daughter," she smiled. You know, Jonas thinks it's a girl. He said he can hear it, in my heart. Arthur laughed. That boy has a special gift. Maybe he'll be our next pediatric cardiologist. The sound of children's laughter reached them from the garden, where Clara was leading another session of the Little Doctors project. Life pulsed in every corner of the place they had built together. The grand celebration of the first anniversary of the integrated network of health centers transformed Villa Esperanza into a party of colors and smiles. The event, which took up the entire street in front of the center, brought together families served, medical teams, authorities, and most importantly, many children running around with their miniature lab coats from the Pequeños Doctores project. At the center of the activities, a special exhibition drew attention. Transformed Hearts, a Year of Miracles. Clara had organized a mosaic of stories, photos, and testimonials that told the journey of the project since its beginning. Every heart has a story, the main panel read, and every story has the power to change other lives. Jonas, proudly wearing his custom lab coat, led visitors through the exhibit like a little expert guide. And here, he pointed excitedly, is when Dr. Lena came back from Germany to have my surgery with the doctors there. Look how strong my heart has become. Dr. Helena, observing the scene, commented to Lena, "You know, when you turned down the first residency offer to follow your own path, I thought you were making a mistake. Today I see that you saw something that we were not yet able to see." On the improvised stage, Selma shared with the audience how the family support program had expanded, now offering not only emotional support, but also professional training for mothers and fathers of children undergoing treatment. Because caring for a sick heart requires more than medicine, she explained. It requires a network of support, understanding, opportunities. The most moving moment of the celebration came when Dr. Roger, the doctor who had saved Artur as a child, took the stage. Now coordinator of the integrated network of health centers, he had a special surprise in store. 30 years ago, he began, I saw a boy with hepatitis who made me promise that one day we would transform the healthcare system. Today, that same boy, together with an extraordinary young doctor, has fulfilled not only that promise but gone far beyond it. The revelation caused a stir in the audience. Artur, normally so controlled in public, could not contain his emotion when his former doctor hugged him on stage. It was at this moment that Lena and Artur chose to make their own announcement. Together on stage, holding hands, they shared the news of their pregnancy. But there was more. In honor of all the children who taught us about courage and hope, Artur announced, we have decided to create the Raphael Foundation in memory of Lena's brother, which will be dedicated to expanding this model of care to other communities across the country. Clara was the first to go up on stage to hug them, followed by Jonas, who shouted excitedly, I knew it was a girl. Laughter and tears of joy mingled as the celebration continued. Colorful heart-shaped balloons were released into the sky, each carrying the dreams and gratitude of the families served. Late in the afternoon, as the party began to wind down, Lena found a moment to visit her special corner of the clinic, the wall where she kept Raphael's photo. Alongside it were other photos. Children smiling after successful surgeries, families gathered together, medical teams celebrating victories. We did it, little brother, she whispered, touching the photo gently. We turned our pain into something bigger than ourselves. Arthur found her there, as he always did in important moments. Without words, he just hugged her, his hands clasped over the little life growing inside her. In the garden of the health center, the children of the Little Doctors project were rehearsing a special song composed by Clara, which spoke about brave hearts and dreams come true. Jonas, with his toy stethoscope, pretended to listen to everyone's hearts, announcing with professional seriousness, everything is perfect. This heart is full of love. And there, under the sky that was beginning to turn pink and orange, Lena understood that some stories don't really have an ending. They continue to pulse, transform, touching other lives in an infinite cycle of love and hope. Because in the end, it wasn't just about mending broken hearts. It was about creating connections, building bridges, turning pain into purpose. It was about understanding that every heartbeat tells a story, and that some stories have the power to change the world, one heart at a time.